Right, in this video I've been getting a few questions on a few groups about this tumbler gear setup. This is excuse me, this is 3D printed for now, but I'm thinking about machining one of these, the backer plate for it. This is obviously the tumbler gear setup, what I've got. So that's going to be forward, so you turn the lathe on, obviously the lead screws going to, the carriage is going to the left. That's neutral, and then that adds the other gear into the train. So when the lathe spins in the normal direction, the carriage is then moving to the right. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take all this lot apart and explain various parts of this as I'm putting it back together. And hopefully that'll explain it. And what I'll do is I'll get the camera pointed above my bench, and I'll get a piece of paper and I'll draw down how to actually make one of these quadrants. Gear plates and the process of the different diametral pitches or modules if you're using metric. Hopefully I'll be able to explain it alright, so you'll be able to make a tumbler gear setup for any lathe that uses obviously change gears. If you've got a small watchmaker's lathe or clockmaker's lathe that hasn't got change gears, then obviously you won't be able to, unless you rig something up. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to take this apart now and then come back to you when it's only this back plate that's attached to the lathe. Right, like I said, this is for any lathe really, so you'd have to modify it and design it for your own lathe type. But this one is a Myford M type long bed, bit of a mess, got swath all over the place, it's in use. But with Myfords, this is the M type. I think the pre-M type, or pre-B type, sorry, has got these. The B type, I'm not sure. The M, and I think later versions have got these as well, or in a different position. But the actual main gear of the tumbler reverse sits on this stud here. Excuse me, that's a burp. That's fastened. It's got the diameter there is obviously wider, so when you tighten that, it clamps onto these. For my design, the diameter goes down for the backer plate. Now the original design, the cheese wedge backer plate just had a set screw, just one set screw, and that's probably why they're so hard to find, because people had realised it was a stupid design and it's hard to work. It should have been keyed. The actual cast iron wedge at the back should have had a key slot, and it should have been keyed to this slot, not just a set screw, because there's a lot of force on this, and it's trying to, when it's turning in that direction, it's trying to drag the gears towards it. If it's not in the right place, it tries to drag it down, and if in reverse it tries to push it up, and it's just a set screw, so it's not strong enough, it should be keyed. So if you haven't got a back plate for the change gear cover, or if you haven't got any change gear cover at all, then you will need to key slot it, keyway it, and key it all together so it doesn't rotate as easy. But because I've got this, I've got it all positioned right exactly where I wanted it, and then I drilled some holes through to actually screw it to this, so it's being held in 3 positions. It's been held by the bore and also the 3 screws. Right, that's the plate on. The distance, same again with your design. This boss here stands off a little bit from the back plate, so so the back of this plate doesn't rub on the actual body. These are cap screws, and the cap screw head's a little bit too deep for that standoff. So what I've had to do is I've had to print these with a recess, so the cap screws sit a little bit further into the actual body of this. Now this is specific to this lathe. That bore there can be any size really, depending on how you design this stud. That goes on there. It's also got a threaded hole just at the top for the bar that goes through the top here to go into. For the Myford, if you've got a set of these gears already for the Myford, these are a different bore to the normal change gears, by the way. I'll measure one of those now in decimal inches, because these are imperial DP gears, they're not module gears. That is 0.6175 inch. If you're going to be making one of these, you might need to have different gears anyway with different bores, so you just design it to the bore that you need. Later on I'll explain the space in between centres as well. That is very important, and the position of these in relation to that hole in the top as well, so it sits right with these slots to mesh properly. I'll explain that later. That goes on. I should have put that gear on first, because now it's going to be awkward. That went on easier than I thought it was going to do. I'll come back to you when I screwed that on. Right, the length of these studs have to be a tiny little bit more, tiny little bit longer than the thickness of the actual gear itself. So the gears, so when you put the washer on or whatever attachment you've got on there to hold the gear onto the stud, it's got a little bit of movement for it to turn. It's not too tight on the actual gear itself. Right, so now that's done. Getting awkward now because it's on camera. I'll stick it in the neutral position so it's easier for me to move around. Right, that threaded rod, that threaded hole, sorry, should I say. You'll have a bar with 2 threads on it. That there's just to tighten it. I've never had to use that yet because it's easy enough to tighten it without using. But I suppose it's good to have there in case it gets so tight that you can't undo it. And you just screw that into there. The plunger, how that works, you've got that with 2 slots on the bottom, and that's bored out, and it's also, that's good that the light's come on it. It's a thinner bore at the bottom for the spring. That just slides on. The spring goes in. You're not angled right, are you? I wish I knew a way to get that light on permanent. The spring goes in, and then you have a nut with 2 little holes in it, and those 2 little holes are for tightening, but with this I don't need to. You tighten that to whatever tension you want it to be. The whole idea then is you can pull that up and release it, so it clips into place if the gear's in the right place. It does that, and that's that made. Now the DP, I'll explain this a little bit better. The DP or the module, whatever you're going to be using for the actual gear sizing, doesn't really matter to a certain extent, as long as all 4 of those gears match. You don't even have to match up these gears, the DP or the module for the change gears, to this, because what happens is the spindle of the lathe will drive any one of these 2, which will then drive that. These change gears don't mesh. They're in a position where they don't mesh, because then what happens is you'll get the smallest gear that normally goes on the spindle, and you'll just key it. You'll just put it on that one. Get the position where it actually matches. That's it. and stick the locker on it. Tighten down. That's the wrong hex for that, I think. That is the right one. And then that is still free to come off. So you need to put a threaded hole in the end of this to hold it all together. Or together to hold it on. You need that tight enough. Well, there's still a little bit of slack there, look, because that needs to be tight to hold it on, but not too tight so it stops these from turning. And then the view that will do from above. Right, the way these designed, the lathe that I got this off, the gear back plate and these gears, well, that one, and that one was 16 DP or diametral pitch, but my lathe takes 14 DP, so the change gear, the main change gears, won't mesh with the actual gear that's on it. So the 22th gear 14 DP that was on the spindle, I'll swap that for this 16 DP one, and then the 20 tooth gear that was on there I stuck on there. So then when I move the change gears up, it meshes that. So they all drive together, and then this 1-to-1 compound drives the change gears. And I'll just tighten it with that, and that's ready to go. And then you've got the forward, neutral, reverse, but the spindle's not in the right place for that. Turn it a little bit, that's it, and that's now in reverse. So now what I'll do is I'll get the camera set up above the bench, and I'll show you how to design one of these if you haven't got the back plate and if you haven't got these gears already. Right, to plan the tumbler reverse, you've got to work with the gears that you've got, or plan it for gears, the actual gears that you want to use for your tumble reverse. These gears are not the right size, obviously that's a 40, that's a 38 and that's a 20. The gears that I've got on mine, they're 16 DP, so in relation to the diameter of the gear, the tooth count is slightly larger than what it would be through a 14 DP. But on my particular lathe, the biggest gear for the tumbler is 22 teeth. The medium one is 20 tooth and the smaller one was 18 tooth. The reason why the different sizes is obviously so they don't mesh with each other. Well, that one meshes with that meshes with that, but then that one doesn't mesh with that. Because all three mesh together and they're all running at different speeds, you'll have a crunch and you'll have teeth missing, or your lathe just won't start. So that one's got to be separated, obviously. And then, so you get the gears that you're going to be using first. You put them together like that, so it's large, medium, small, and then you measure between them. Now I'm doing this in millimetres because I work on millimetres. So that's, say, 70. That's 70.22, but that if you move those slightly apart, the involute gears, so they don't have to be actually touching perfect. And also this is very inaccurate the way I'm measuring these. If you're planning it yourself, you're going to be doing it a lot better than this. Or I hope so anyway. Right, so I'm going to write that down. So the distance between large to medium is 70. Medium to small is, say, 52. Round it up to 52 for this. And then large to small. Say 63. Because when you make your quadrant, the actual gear plate, you won't want to lining these gears up on it and trying to mark through these holes and everything to try to get everything centred. So you're going to have to blow it and then get a scriber or a marker, or if you've got a drow, you can put it in the drow. So what you do is get, say that's the piece of steel that I'm going to be using. That circle's probably too small now. Right, so from the large to the medium, I've wrote this down slightly off screen, you can't see this. So that's 70. So you get your, stick that at 70. Get your compass or dividers, whatever you want to call them, whatever part of the world you're in. Right, so for that centre mark, you draw, say a quarter circle. That circle was too small. But if you can distinguish between pen and pencil. Right, somewhere along that line, I'm going to put a dot. That is the centre. That's the distance between centres for the large gear and the medium gear. Then what we need is, we need between the medium and the small. So the medium to the small was 52. So alter that to 52. Close enough. Close enough for government work. Then you do a circle from that, or a half circle from that point. And then where those lines cross is the smaller gear. So I've got large, medium and the small. That's the centres. But now I need to know the distance between these two. So you get the gist, hopefully, if you've done stuff like this in school. I've done stuff like this in school as well, but that was donkeys years ago. Large to small was 63. Move that to 63, these out of the way. And the distance then between the large and the small. So it's not actually that dot, it's going to be that one. So it's going to be that to drill, that to drill, and then that to drill. And then to prove the point, you're not going to see the dots anyway, so I could lie to you. They match up perfectly. But also remember, when you mark these up as well, don't push the gears together so they're very tight. Leave them separated just that little bit. Otherwise, if you put them too close together, the teeth will grind the valleys of the teeth of one gear will grind the valley of the following gear. It'll sound very noisy, it'll wear quite quick. So you just separate them just that tiny little bit. So when they're meshed together, you've got a little bit of clearance. Not too much obviously, otherwise they're not going to mesh at all, but somewhere between. So you push them close together and then just separate them just that tiny little bit. Get a piece of paper or something, put a piece of paper there and then push them together, and then that's where you actually measure, between the two. So you'll have that, and then you'll have whatever shape quadrant you want really, and that's the gear. And then what you'll then the hole in the actual back plate for the lever will be around there somewhere.